Alright, guys, we're gonna get the podcast going. I'm gonna be in active fights while I'm doing this, as usual. You know, floor's open for questions. Let me get the guys in here. Let me unmute it so you can hear them. Alright, Mr. Karras, Mr. Tosh, if you want to sound off, make sure the sound setting here is working. Say something now. Okay, now I'm getting an echo. Hold on here. Yeah, hold on a second. I got a bad echo. Let me fix that. Alright, say something now.
Say something now.
Got it. That fixed the echo. I was like, wait a second now, why are we getting an echo? But we got some serious issues to discuss. A lot of good topics got brought to the table, especially last night. But as Tosh, you haven't been on the show in a while, I think we'll start with you, and then we'll kind of work our way around. As usual, I usually run these for about 2 hours, and we go from there. So, that being said, Tosh, the floor is yours, my friend.
Thank you for having me, first of all. I do appreciate you extending the invitation, or accepting my request, I should say, I guess. Either way. So thank you. Karasana, how are you doing?
I'm okay. I slept good last night.
I did not. We got a new puppy, and our puppy keeps me awake all night long. So if I'm a little, let's say, slower than usual, I do apologize. So, Toth, do you want me to just start off with topics that I had, or did you have one?
Yeah,
Okay.
Go ahead and start off with. I have a couple of things I'm going to discuss, but go ahead and lead off with what you want to discuss.
Okay, so my first topic that I'm going to bring up is actually something that was somewhat brought up. It was brought up in your previous podcast, because I try to watch a lot of streamers, a lot of content through VODs, although some streamers, VODs, it's hard to watch. Like, no disrespect, but Karasana's VODs are hard to watch because they're usually muted. I understand why he does it, though, so it's not a big deal. But your podcast, there was a conversation that was happening last week between you and Karasana, and it was in regards to why players get upset on this server when there's PvE content instead of PvP content. And this is one thing that I disagreed on Karasana with, and it was, I'm going to paraphrase Karasana, and that was, he said, well, just effectively, just, get over it, it's a game. And my point of view is I'm a player that I do almost zero PvE on the server. Yes, I've done the occasional BS dungeon to help someone out, or the occasional C&T dungeon to help somebody out, but almost none of my characters are PvE geared in any way. I don't do any of the live events because they usually require some level of PvE. So anything that requires PvE, I just don't do it on any of my characters. And my reason for not doing any PvE on this server at all is because most games that are released are PvE focused. I play Warhammer because it's PvP focused. If I wanted to PvE, there are millions of games where I could PvE until my heart is content. Warhammer is the one place where I can PvP focus play. Whereas most games, I can't PvP focus play. So I think that is a stance that a lot of people have on the server when they release PvE content over PvP content, and they get upset or agitated because there's no PvP content, or the events are PvE focused, because they are here to PvP. Otherwise, they could go play Diablo, or they could go play Warhammer, or they could go play, they could go play WoW, or they could go play millions of other games that are PvE focused until their heart's content. This game was built and based around PvE. Otherwise, most people would not be here. That is my first thing. Go ahead.
Well, my response to that would be, and I played live, is that I get the PvP idea end of it, but if it was solely built for nothing but PvP, they'd never introduced any PvE at all. And that,
Well,
hold on, let me finish.
Go
I
ahead,
was
go ahead,
courteous and let you say
I
your
know.
piece. The point is that they're trying to include both spectrums because that's what's been in the game from the word go. Yes, the predominant focus is PvP. I will not disagree with that. I don't mind PvP. But I see with there being both aspects in the game and both ways that you can gear up and how they function off of one another, I don't have a problem with them putting in stuff for PvE any more than I do for PvP. And I think that some of the more hardcore-minded PvPers need to chill on that front. Because I see it as, yes, you may pull in more PvEers, but here's the thing. Get them in the game, and then try to pull them into PvP. Get them interested in PvP. Show them the fun that you see in it without immediately lashing out. Which is what I see a lot of people doing. Plus the fact that it offers, it opens up a spectrum for both player styles. It gives them something. It gives them something to do. Like when it's dull and there's no serious fights going on. I mean, if it gets to that point and if you take out all the PvE content, just get rid of it. Okay, what are people supposed to do? Sit, twiddle their thumbs? Because that's pretty much what you would be doing. I can't allow that comment there, Flim, because of the auto mod. But I get what you're saying. So, again, I don't mind them doing it so long as that they don't try to favor one over the other. Or in this case, don't sit there and try to force it on people. But go ahead.
My response. I would need more. There had to be more context to whatever we were talking about because, as a simple answer to the question of PvP in the game, I wouldn't say something like people can just get over it as the end all and be all of the question. There had to be more to it than that. So I will just reiterate my feeling about it is I agree with Tosh is that if there was no need and no attraction for PvE in the game, it wouldn't have been there from the start. And PvE is not preferable. I don't think, there may be a handful of people on the server that, exclusively are heavily run the PvE content. But I think to one degree or another, everyone does at times because some of the PvE gear is well worth having for, particularly for like a white lion and a sword master and a witch elf. Sentinel gear is great for a witch elf. Sentinel gear and bloodlord gear is great for a sword master. It's the only thing I resent about it is having to do gun bad, because gun bad gear is predominantly useless by the time you get it. You've moved on to something better, but you have to get it so that you can use bloodlord later. But that's the part about it that I resent. But and the comment that you cited, Tosh, is, I said it's a game, get over it. That's my opinion when people bitch about,
Language,
just,
language, language.
I, sorry, when people articulate adverse opinions in response to something in the game, um, then yeah, that's my general, in game comment, which no one is forcing anyone to do anything here. So if you don't want to do PVE, and Tasha, I respect your opinion. I mean, it's not that. If you don't want to do PVE, that's perfectly fine. Doesn't, that doesn't cause any consternation at all. But if other people do, that's fine too. It's just part of the game. So there's no sense in complaining. I guess that would have been my overall comment. I think to the issue, because I don't really, because to tell you the truth, I don't really remember 2 weeks back exactly the context we were talking about, but in the way you brought it up, that would have been my response. So.
Well, I think now this is my take on it overall. I see the two as supportive of one another, but at the same time, I also see it as, okay, if people want a PvP, then PvP. That's fine. If they want a PvE, PvE. That's also fine, as you just said. I'm for the life of me, I don't understand some of the more heavy-minded PvPers on the server that get belligerent towards anyone that does any form of PvE. I'm like, it goes beyond an opinion to the point of where it's like, no, we're going to bully you until you accept our way as the only way. And that's where I have a problem. I'm sorry, but I hate to burst the PvPers' bubbles. You do your thing, I'll do mine. In my case, I enjoy both aspects of the game. I just don't understand the animosity factor that's in there. And it's just not needed.
Can't we all just get along?
Funny. But well put, at least in that regard. Tosh, anything else you'd like to bring to the table on that one?
Well, like I said, I think the animosity comes from the fact that this is one of the few games where players have a place to actually PvP in an open world PvP game. Most games the PvP is either going to be instance based or some form of non-open world fluid basic capture and conquer games. So this is one of the few games in the past 20 years that's really ever been released that allows players that opportunity. And some players would rather have PvP content released more than a PvE content released. Because like I said, if they want to PvE, there are millions of games to allow them to PvE until their hearts are content. But there's not millions of games where they can PvP how their heart's content.
I have one response to that. I agree with you about the PvP aspect. And I've said, often that I think that's one of the reasons the primary reason, I should say, that this game is still as popular as it is, even on a private server, and why it is still one of the best games to be played out there, even, after all these years. And it still holds its own incredibly well. But when you talk about other games for PvE, WoW sucks at PvE. Warhammer at least has the Warhammer background, right? Warhammer, if people want a PvE, I'm saying, here, Warhammer at least has the Warhammer lore, which is which is one of the things that originally attracted me to the game all those years ago was, oh, it's fracking Warhammer, you know, and so for those in the community that want to go out and run quests or whatever, at least it's the Warhammer world. You know, in WoW they have meeting places for online gatherings that are more like a Tinder date room than uh, than any kind of PvE content. You don't find that crap here, right? Uh,
I never played WoW, and so I don't have any experience with it because it never attracted to me. And when it comes to lore, I am not a lore person. I don't know anything about Warhammer or WoW. I'm purely here from for PvP. I left Dark Age of Camelot after almost 10 years purely for PvP. I went to Rift purely for PvP, but they turned that into a PvE game, so that's why I left Rift. Um, it's too hard to find PvP based MMOs that have open world content. Now, yes, you can play games where they allow you to, queue up and instance fight somebody on some level. Yes, those games exist, but not a open world PvP concept where a sieging mechanic, a capture mechanic, a campaign mechanic is built in. Those games, besides maybe ESO really is maybe the only game that's been released recently, and that's not even recent, that has some sort of mechanic around that concept. Basically, one game out there. So players who I think want to play on Warhammer server have a different some players, that is, not all. Some players have a different expectation that, okay, this game came out in 2008. I remember it being a PvP game. I want to come here to PvP for the most part. Now, I'm not saying throw out all PvE content. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying I think some players are getting frustrated that some content appears to be more of a PvE focus, and they would rather see PvP updates, because that's why I'm going to assume why the majority of them are here.
yeah, I don't disagree with any of that. I'm just the only point that we have in contention, I suppose, is that some people, I have absolutely no problem with anybody being on this server and wanting to do PvE. If that's their thing, that's their thing, I mean, doesn't bother me. And I every now and then, here's the context real quick. When I first got into Warhammer back in 2008, when it came out, Warhammer was my first MMO game. So I had absolutely zero experience with MMO games prior to getting Age of Reckoning. So consequently, the first thing I did was follow a bunch of the quest lines. And I did that for a while. I think it wasn't until I got past level 20 or something that I finally started doing scenarios and stuff like that. And then I figured out, right, the difference between the two. And but to memory, some of the quest lines that I did, I thought they were rather fun. I thought some of the quest lines were rather fun. And so every now and then, even here, every now and then, when I don't feel like, going out and bashing people or being hunted by a 12-man, whatever, and I just want to play a game and be left alone for a little while, right? Want to play a game and be left alone for an hour or two. I'll go bash one of the PQs and farm for stuff, or I'll pick up the ley line quest or something. And it's not often I do that, but I'm glad I'm glad the option is there. I suppose that's my point. I'm glad the option is there to do something else if I feel like doing something else. I have spoken.
Well, then I have in taking into context what I saw Little Demon say. and I've seen others say this. So, what would you guys think of the idea if it were of the possibility? Now, keep in mind, say they continue with the PvE updates as well as PvP based stuff, but make a clean break between the two. You don't want to do PvE stuff for a best in slot? What would you be open? What about the idea of separating the two entirely?
Well, I already don't do best in slot PvE stuff.
No. I know that. I'm saying about put the best in slot, even if it meant duplicating the two items, put, as there's two ways to gear, put two ways to get them. Make a straight up PvP available one.
Oh, so you mean basically like a PvP Bloodlord?
Yes. Straight up. Doesn't require
My
any PvE at all.
my opinion is that if they did that, and this is just my opinion, the PvE on the server would die, 100%, because no one would do it. Or I should say no one. I would say the vast majority of people that do it now only because they feel they have to, but they don't go back and do it again or help anyone else out once they have acquired their gear to get what they want to get. They do it how many times they have to do that, the runs to get whatever they want to get, and they don't return to do that again unless it's for an alt. It's not like they're helping other people obtain their gear. So I would say if you could obtain Bloodlord through PvP methods, probably 70 to 80% of the population that's doing PvE now for gear would never do PvE for gear.
That's a very good possibility. I mean, I threw that out there to offer that as a possible solution, even though as you say, that's probably the most likely outcome.
I mean, how many people do you see get Bloodlord and then offer to help other people get Bloodlord over and over and over again? There are a few people, yes, there are. You know, like Disastrous is one person I think of, or at the top of my head. Disastrous, Techno, I know does it a lot, helps people out. But for every person that gets PvE gear for BIS, they never do those dungeons again to help anyone else out. They do it for themselves, and they never return unless for an alt. So if you could buy Bloodlord, it would be just like the ranked ring. You know, how many people are actually doing ranked to get the ranked ring? Now they can just get Crest to buy it. 12 people?
Fair enough.
20 people are still doing ranked?
Yeah, but that would destroy. I mean, I admit that I have a little bias here because of all the PvE dungeons that were available on live, and now for those that have transferred here, Bash and Stare was always one of my favorites. I liked the ambiance. I thought it was a fun place to go run around in. You know, and I would hate to see it become academic. And if they ever release Lost Veil, the same thing would be true, because Lost Veil was a lot of fun. I never liked Gunbad. I never liked Gunbad, and Gunbad sucked on live, and it sucks here. And there's just
I don't know either one of them. I mean, yes, I've done Bastion Stairs, but Lost Veil, I never did it on live, so I don't know what it's like.
Well, I won't belabor the point. I'm just saying that as dungeons go, I liked that one.
Okay.
But I would hate when you talk about making Bloodlord gear, Sentinel gear, purchasable by Warcrest, then that would just negate the dungeons altogether, and nobody would do them.
Exactly.
And so what I would hate to see that happen, I guess.
So you would hate to see it happen for nostalgia purposes?
No, because I hate to see it happen because A, all the work that went into getting them to run and be available on the server. B, because some people do enjoy running them. I think Bash and Stare is a lot of fun. And anytime I can, I go with a group to run it. And you're talking about taking a significant portion of the gamer experience on a server and just rabbit holing it, right? Just saying, okay, all this stuff is here, and maybe one person a year goes, or one group a year goes and does it. That just seems like a cosmic waste. As opposed, because there is another option. Maybe instead of just taking all the gear from Crypts and Tunnels or Bash and Stare or whatever, and making it purchasable by Warcrest, you could add a few tweaks to the dungeons themselves to encourage more people to do them more often. I would rather see that type of approach than just gutting the thing altogether. And as far as ranked, people didn't stop doing ranked because it was hard. People stopped doing ranked because it was so. And in deference to you, Toth, I will not use the word I was about to. But people stopped doing ranked because it was so toxic that there was absolutely no fun. If you went into ranked and made one little mistake, you heard about it for the next 90 minutes. And the next time you got into a ranked, people would be giving you crap about it. And,
it bred a toxic minded set.
It was just, ranked was just so toxic.
That's true. I agree with that. It is a very toxic environment. However, I think if the ranked ring was only available via ranked, I think you would still see not a lot of people, but you'd see a lot more people than we currently have now playing it purely to get the ring. Once they got the ring, they wouldn't return. So they wouldn't care about winning or losing. They just want to grind the crest or the currency to get the ring. Then once they got it, they would never return to it. Kind of like a PvE dungeon. So they would just suffer through it to get it because they feel like they have to get it because they're told it's the best gear and you must get it. So I think there would be a lot more people who would just do it just to get it. Then once they got it, it wouldn't return. And they would just suffer through it and just move on. Whereas now, they don't have to suffer through it. If they do a ranked match and they find that X player is being toxic and just say, well, F off, I'm just going to save up my crest and buy it. F you, I'll never return. So they have an option now. Whereas before, you either deal with the toxicity or you don't get it.
Yeah, but that level of toxicity is not to be found when running Crypts and Tunnels or Bash and Snare.
Well, it depends on what group you were playing with.
That's true. That's very true.
That depends who you're playing with. I've seen a lot of toxic people in PvE.
All right, I will accept your word for that. I have, when it comes to running those instances, I haven't had that experience.
It's like
with
anything.
People, because.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I was just going to say because, that one of the aspects of, say, running the Bash and Stare when it first came out. And when it first came out, you had to figure out. It was like an A, B, C, D, E, and then you win. The concept, right? You do this, then you do that, then you do the other thing, and if you do it right in that particular order, you defeat the boss and get whatever it is the prize is, right? But figuring out that sequence to me was part of the fun, was part of the attraction. I didn't want to go into a PvE dungeon and the very first time and have it be so easy that there was absolutely no challenge to it. Some players do, but to me, figuring out the details is part of the fun. Okay, well, now that all that's over with, I still think Bash and Stare is a cool place to go run around in. And again, part of it is just the ambiance, right? I think that it's the one PvE dungeon that the original designers did that they actually took the time to get right as far as the way it looks and all of that. So anyway, enough about that, I guess.
What does the community out there in the podcast, what would they do if they were able to buy PvE gear through PvP means? Would they do PvE? What do you think?
I don't know. That's a good-
Or would they still do it because they love PvE?
It's up to you guys in chat. What do you think? What do you think? I mean, you're those of you that are here. You're in the community, so let's hear what you got to say. But please keep it clean, guys.
My guess is they would not do it. The PvE, they would stick to PvP. There are some outliers, yes.
For Nani, okay, double X for Nani move 5 double X. If I can already buy PvE gear equivalent, I'd still do PvE to save the crest for Sov. I think that's a good point. I mean, Sov gear, the Sov Warlord gear is expensive, and it should be, right? And so for those who, because I also think that if you made that change, right? If you made the change that all the PvE gear can now be bought with Warlord crest, then people would bitch then people would complain because they would want the drop rate on the crest increased to account for the fact that there are more things to buy, which falls back to the old truism about MMO games in general, is that you can never please everybody. Never. You're never going to make everybody happy. So there's absolutely no need to try. So that's another reason why I support just leaving the system as it is. And if people choose not to do the PvE content, that's all well and good. Nobody's making them.
That was my first topic.
Alright. Anybody else in chat like to weigh into the conversation? Guys, I'm not reading off I'm not doing my normal advertisement regiment simply because I'm trying to stay focused on the podcast, but those ads do help keep the stream going. So if you want to check them out, they are safe. I do check the links. They're not questionable, so you don't need to worry on that. Let's see. NS Canada, let's see, rather simple. PvE sets and weapons were always appealing because they were easier to get, but the trade back was that it was worse than PvP sets. That being said, I play RoR mainly for PvP, and doing dungeon takes away from the time I have to play. I enjoy dungeons, quests, and PQs, and I do them mainly for unique fashion hammer, and for dungeons and other content to where they have to offer unique rewards. So I'm kind of on both sides of the argument here. It's fair. That's a fair statement. I mean, it's my own preferences. I mean, there are days when I really just don't care for the PvP, so I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go do PvE stuff.
Cruel makes a good comment. I mean, I understand that, I should say. I understand his comment that you don't do the dungeons to become better at doing dungeons. Yes, of course. But I still think that getting the gear to be better in PvE, having to do the dungeons in order to get the gear that makes you better in PvE, I still see that as a logical progression. And
I've never understood the progression of doing PvE to PvP. That's one reason why I left Rift, is when they released PvE gear that was better than PvP gear for PvPers. Then why would anyone do PvP to get PvP gear if they could just run a dungeon and then be better than the people that actually spend time PvP and to
Well,
get PvP gear.
I can give you one example, and this is just an anecdotal example. I understand that, but I wanted the Bloodlord Greatsword for my Swordmaster, so I was doing, this was back in my Salt Factory days, and we ran Bastion Stair whenever everybody's lockouts were clear. And I really wanted the Bloodlord weapon, and when I got it, I put talismans on it, went out to the battlefield, I got jumped by a witch elf and won the fight, and that was kind of like that was the gratification moment, right? Okay, I spent this time to get the Bloodlord weapon, and oh wow, it works, and so that was the gratification moment. Now, that may mean nothing to other players, and I understand that. I'm just saying that for me, that was the moment that made it worthwhile. So that's anecdotal evidence. I understand, so take it for what it's worth. But that was my justification, because I did the PvE stuff, and then I got the satisfaction that I wanted from it in the PvP world.
Well, I mean, a lot of people have brought a lot of good points to the table, and again, and I've said this to you, Tosh, before in your stream. My thought process is on it. Yeah, sure, you could take the PvE content completely out of the game and just focus on nothing but PvP. But to me, doing so robs the game of part of its essence, because what gives the whole PvP drive, the fighting, is the lore, and the lore is attached around a lot of the PvE. So to me, it would be like literally cutting the heart out of the game, and at that point, take the Warhammer title off of it and just turn it into another PvP battle royale. And I hate those styles of games. I won't play them.
And I understand the lore argument for some people. Ravzar comes into my stream daily basis. He's a big lore person. Although he also tells me how badly the lore is in this game on many instances and circumstances. But I understand that the lore for some people is why they're here to begin with. Because they either read books or I don't know if there's comics, I have no idea, but I know there's books. So I understand that the lore aspect for a lot of people is what drove them to this direction. And I'm not taking that away from people. I don't know anything about the lore. I don't care about the lore. Me personally, that's just me. People who like lore, I have nothing against them for liking the lore or for why that's what brought them here. I'm like, great, awesome. I'm happy for you. But there's also a lot of people who they're not here for lore, but I understand that as well. I understand your point. And I'm not saying remove PvE content and make it strictly a battle royale game. Although that's kind of what it's turning into anyway. In some aspects, that's a different conversation. My point is that I think there are players that are saying, okay, this is another PvE patch. This is another PvE patch. This is another PvE patch. Where's my PvP patch? I'm waiting for a PvP patch because that's why I am mostly here. That's my main point. And again, when I was listening to the podcast 2 weeks ago, and this topic somewhat came up, and then the comment was made again. I'm going to paraphrase. Well, I'm not even going to go over it again, but I was a little agitated by it because I'm like, no, not just get over it or whatever, because the reason why I'm even on this server is for PvP, pure and simple. And now it's not to be toxic. I understand the toxicity factor on both sides. I'm not one of those people that says do it my way or get out. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm purely here. Otherwise, like I said, I could play a million other games that offer me PvE content, probably much, much better than what Warhammer does in execution. But I'm here for that purpose. and that's and I'll end it there.
It's a fair statement. I mean, everybody that has said something so far has a valid viewpoint. I'm not going to say any one person is wrong because I understand both ends of the spectrum. I wish there was some way to find a solid medium so that you didn't have people going at each other about it, because here's what I see coming out of it. That negative animosity has also cost the community a lot of people, because people come in, again, they come in to have fun. So if they come in and the first thing that happens is they're being bullied into, okay, well, my viewpoint is the only right viewpoint, most people, that is an instant kill switch.
Yeah, but I don't think anybody's done that here.
Oh, yes, they have.
I'm not,
does it.
No, I'm talking about
oh,
Tosh's comments. I have taken Tosh's comments that way. He hasn't.
No,
he's never made that point.
I get that, but I'm saying it. Let me finish my thought, but I get what you're saying. I've seen Smash with that mindset. I've seen been in Tylax. I've seen every major guild, including Bitterstone, and I've even seen some of the Destro guilds that do it. It's like a new player comes in, and the comments immediately start. Don't do PvE. It's a waste of time. It's toxic. If you do it, you're an idiot, you're a moron, you're a fool. I've seen comments like that on both sides. Guess what? That doesn't help endear the game to people. It really doesn't.
No, I agree with that, and I'm never advocating to bully people for enjoying in the game how they want to enjoy the game. If you want a PvE, then PvE into your heart's content. I'm not saying remove PvE content, but I think it would be a really, really eye-opening experience if the devs did ever make PvE gear purchasable through PvP. I would actually like to see. I honestly would like to see if the community continues to PvE, or if the vast majority would just walk away from it and say, well, no, I don't want to do it because I didn't like it in the first place. I only did it because I felt I had to. Now I don't have to. I have another option of obtaining something, so I'm not going to do it. I would like to actually see something like that happen on some level, just as a test, to see if people would actually PvE, even if they could PvP and earn the gear through crests. So let's say I don't know how many dungeon runs it takes in Bastion Stairs. Is it 2 runs, 4 runs? I don't know. Let's say it's 2 runs. So would people be willing to run Bastion Stairs 2 times to get gear, or would they be willing to PvP for, let's say, 3 days and get gear? Which option would they choose? I would guess that there's a lot of people who would say, no, I'll just PvP it. And they wouldn't do the 2 runs, or how many runs it takes. Oh yes, there are some that would still do the PvE aspect of it, and that's fine. That's fine. But I would like to actually see what you've mentioned, Toth, to give an option for PvP players to earn this gear through a totally method. And they would also kind of show what the player base truly wants to do. Because maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I am completely wrong in my assessment, and people would actually love to continue to PvE and do dungeons. I could be very, very wrong, but my assumption is I'm not.
Well, it's a fair point. I wouldn't mind seeing it either. Just try it on a trial basis, see what happens, and then coming out of it, stick with the direction that is what the community is after. But the biggest thing would be to stress, don't listen to any one small section of the community. Base it on a majority, not just, the select few. Because if you start relying on just the core, and you only do things based on what that small handful wants, it's not going to end well.
Oh, and I 100% agree with you. Maybe they could do a game survey and pop into a game survey and say, hey, would you, as a community, as a game survey, would the players prefer to earn gear, Bloodlord gear through crests, or would you continue to do it through the dungeons? What would the community like to do as a survey? And see how many people respond, and then go ahead, and then, have Kayleen post that, 3 months later, and say this is what the community chose, this was the results, and this is the direction we're gonna either go or stay. I'd be okay with that.
What's your take on it,
But
Garrus?
again, I think that again, as one of the comments that was made in the Twitch chat a little while ago, that because the in-game gear, the Sovereign Warlord gear, is so expensive and takes a while to get, that I think there'd be a sizable percentage of players who wouldn't want to spend their War Crest on Bloodlord gear when the Bloodlord gear or Sentinel gear, whatever, when that can be obtained through PvE, because people want to save their crest for what they really want at the end of the day. People want to get into the Invader Sovereign Warlord as fast as they can, and so diverting a percentage of the crest to something they could get by another means, I don't think would be. I don't think that many people would. I don't think that many people would take advantage of it, because some would, but if I can do Bastion Stare and get all that gear and it not cost me a single War Crest, that is what I would prefer to do. Now again, I'm just talking anecdotal evidence from myself, but that I think I would not be the only one. Okay, please go ahead.
Well, the only thing I would say to that is I don't think most people are running full sets of Bloodlord. I think most people do Bloodlord for one piece of gear, which is usually the weapon, generally speaking. So they wouldn't be spending a full suit of crest to buy all Bloodlord. They would just buy the one weapon, because they're still going to wear their Sovereign and their Warlord or Victorious or Vanquish or whatever gear they have as their armor. Most people don't wear Bloodlord armor. They're wearing Sovereign Warlord armor with a Bloodlord weapon.
Well, it's a transitional set, sure. Sentinel gear is a transitional set. Bloodlord is a transitional set, but when you're in that window, where you can't get the Invader yet because for whatever reason you're building toward Invader or you're building toward Sovereign, Bloodlord mixed with Vanquisher and stuff. I mean, you can have some really good builds based off of mixing and matching the various sets. Now, but I understand, eventually you come out of all that. You use oppressor gear for a while, you use Vank gear for a while. Eventually, you come out of all of that. But when you're in that window where you need that stuff, you can do some really effective builds off of mixing that stuff up. So, I still think for that it would be that it is worthwhile.
Like I said, I think it would be a really cool test if they were able to throw a survey out there to see what the community would like to do if they go in that direction. And like I said, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm 100%, 1,000,000% wrong. And maybe people were like, no, I want to do the PvE for the gear. I would be like, you know what? The community has spoken. I am wrong. But I truly feel that the majority of the community would be on my opinion, or something like what Toth brought up. Yeah. But anyway, I will, like I said, I'll leave it at that.
It would be interesting to see what would happen. As you said, put it to a survey, see what people say on it, and then go from there. I mean, try to get a general consensus coming out of it of, what direction to really run with.
Yeah, there's absolutely nothing bad about running a survey. So if they want to take the time, I'd be all.
Yeah. I would be interested to see that. I think that would be a very valid thing. Put it to an actual, full-on survey and hear what the people got to say. That would be my big stress point, is listen to, take everything into context, but don't don't limit your indecision to just what certain individuals say is the biggest stress
Yeah.
point.
Yeah, I wouldn't say, for example, I wouldn't say, well, Tosh voted this. I'm going to use myself here in this context, so I don't use anyone else's name. Well, Tosh voted this, so we're going to do what Tosh says. That's, of course not. Of course not. It would be, 51% of the community said this, 49 said this. We're going to go with the 51%. Something like, and I realize 51-49 is almost dead even, but I'm just saying,
I got you.
maybe take it in the direction of what the majority says. If the majority says this is the direction we're going to go.
And there's Kalang.
So that would be, personally, I would love to see if the community managers did something like that, just to see what the community would say. Because, like I said, I think the majority of the player base would say, although the first question would be, well, how much is the blood weapon going to cost in Crest? That would be the first question. Well, what's the cost? Because they would have to know how much Crest it would cost to get the Bloodlord weapon, of course. But
1 million.
well, I mean, yeah, but I would love to see if they did a survey like that, because I think the community would say it would be more than 50% of the player base would say, yeah, I'll earn Bloodlord weapon through PvP. I won't do the dungeon. Personally, I think it would be a great test to see what the community would want to do.
Again, I wouldn't be opposed to it, and you guys know me well enough to know I enjoy doing both. I just don't like the idea of one side attacking the other over the differences of opinions on it is where I draw the line at.
No, and again, I'm not advocating for toxicity from anyone. Toxicity, as Karasana said, it's a game,
Yeah.
and some people take it a little too seriously.
That is true.
On both sides. I've seen some really toxic PvEers, and I've seen some really toxic PvPers. It happens on both spectrums.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying, I got a little agitated when I heard the comics. I'm like, I wouldn't be here to PvE. I'm here to PvP because this is one of the few games that allows me to do the play style and the content how I like to play it.
Yeah, I get that. That's a very valid
But
point. Very fair view.
My succinct counterpoint to that is there is nothing in the PvE content for this game that prevents you from being exclusively PvP. The two are not mutually exclusive. You can you can completely ignore the PvE content and be fine.
Well, true, but most people. Well, the thing with that is, like, I completely ignore it myself. I don't do any of it. But there are some people who will feel like, because they're going to go onto a forum, or they're going to go into a Discord, they're going to go into a warband, and they're going to say, hey, I'm a new player, what do I get? They're going to say, well, if you want Bisque gear, you got to do this dungeon, this dungeon, this dungeon, this dungeon. Otherwise, you're not going to be Bisque gear, and you're going to suck. Because you need Bisque gear to compete. Because you're going to go up against renown rank 80s in Bisque gear. And if you're not a Bisque gear, you're going to suck, you're going to die, you're going to lose. So they're gonna feel almost pressured to get Bisque gear, which for some classes is PvE gear.
Well, I guess I could relate that to
the Bloodlord weapon is regarded as the best weapon in the game for 90% of classes.
Well, yeah, that's true. It's a good weapon.
And it's the PvE weapon best in for PvP purposes.
Well, the Fortress weapon is
it's not regarded as one of the best weapons for 90% of classes compared to Bloodlord. It's regarded as a competent weapon, but not a best weapon.
Yeah, the Bloodlord blade is It's generally I got to give you that one. I mean, especially for a witch elf, the Bloodlord blade is considered a prerequisite. It's like you're suffering if you don't have it. So yeah, I see your point.
Well, I think, honestly, well, it's not so much I think. I mean, the conversation, the questions that have been put forward so far have been very solid. I've heard arguments and viewpoints from both sides of the aisle, and I think most would agree here. I'm not going to say any one point of view is wrong. Everyone has had a valid viewpoint of what they, on the subject matter. Kalang stepped into the chat at the tail end of what we were talking about. He's gonna watch it later. Kalang, I will have it. I will have this up on my YouTube, and I'll make sure to send you a link to it. The gist of it is that we put forward the idea of basically, if everybody's in agreement here, put a survey out of what people would prefer to do. Would they prefer to straight up PvP, earn the crest to get their gear and not have to do any PvE, or vice versa? Because it's a lot of the answers have been mixed from both sides of the fence, for and against, and even some like agreeing that you can't really so much have one without the other. But see what the overall community's thoughts would be on possibly focusing more strictly just the PvP side of things. So instead of having to run the PvE dungeons for best in slot gear, make it where it's just you earn it straight up through PvP. You're still doing the War Crest grind, you're just doing it through PvP.
All right, we ready to move on to another topic?
Yeah, it's... Yeah, we're about to do that. I was just kind of a quick recap. Karis, what topic would you like to bring to the table? Because I know you had quite a few, and Tosh made a very good topic to start off from the get-go, so...
I think that given what day it is, the troll, it was an epic troll to put on the forums that all dwarf classes were going to be deleted from the game. I just... This is a side point, okay? This isn't my main point. But I thought that was just fracking hilarious, man. And I know a lot of people got upset about it, but it was just a joke, and it was a good joke. When I saw the first one I read, of course, was that sword masters were going to be given, no longer use a two-hand sword, but will have two swords similar to a dock. When I first read that, I thought, I almost took it seriously, and then I realized what was going on. But I thought this whole thing was just hilarious. So, and then giving Choppa the rampage. Oh man. Okay, that's enough of that. I don't want to bring up. My actual point is this. In regard to scenarios, the 30-second respawn timer, yeah, I think that should be reduced to the standard 5 seconds. Now, I understand why it's at 30 seconds, because that has been articulated. It was articulated on the forums, I think, and in Discord both some time ago. And the specific reason given, was that there's a rotating 30-second respawn timer, so that if anyone dies in the game and hits respawn, everyone within that 30-second window will respawn at the same time, and then you're not going back into the fight alone. Okay. I understand that, but my counter is, if you made it a 5-second respawn timer, and let the players make that decision on their own. In other words, grant the consideration that the people playing this game have functioning brains and can make a decision like that as to whether or not they want to wait a few seconds or just take off or whatever it is they're going to do, that we as gamers can make that decision on our own and not have it dictated to us. And another reason I posed the 30-second respawn timer is because you can have half your group respawn at the same time, and they'll still run off in 6 different directions.
That's
you
true.
know, it doesn't. The fact that everybody may respawn at the same time doesn't mean crap when it comes to what people are going to do at that particular moment. And for some reason, one of the hardest things to do, it wasn't always this way. And again, if anybody's listening who may not know, I've been playing on the server since 2016. You know, pretty much with one notable exception period of time, pretty much nonstop. And in running scenarios, I can tell you from history that it wasn't always this way, but recently, for some reason, getting order to group up and stay together, one of the simplest things you can do in an SC is damn near impossible.
Language.
And I don't understand it. I don't understand it. Because the mechanics, and I'll go off on this tangent here for a minute. The game mechanics have changed over time. And the way that you can prosecute playing an SC in order to attempt to win the SC has therefore changed with it. And it used to be that in some, given the way the maps are designed in some of the scenarios, it used to be that splitting your force was a good idea. Kane's Embrace is the perfect example of that. There was a time, given the way the classes functioned, there was a time years ago when Kane's Embrace was the perfect place to split your forces. Now it isn't. You do that now, you lose. And it's because the classes themselves have changed and thus have changed the way that the scenarios should be played. Okay, in context of that, the 30-second respawn timer just prohibits. It helps to prohibit trying to prosecute the scenario to win, and it's boring. Especially if you're streaming. If you're streaming and you know, and you happen to go down in the scenario, then you got to sit there for 30 seconds while the timer clicks, and then you have to run. You have to take another 30 seconds or more to run back to where the fight is, and it's just, it's just boring. It's tedious. It's aggravating. I think it should just be a 5-second respawn. Let the players themselves use the brains that God gave them, make the decision on their own as to what they're going to do when they respawn, as opposed to having it dictated to the player base at large. Okay, so that's my point.
Sounds a lot like Karasana wants a survey to be released so players have a choice.
Wait, say that. I'm sorry. Say that again.
I said it sounds like Karasana wants a survey released so players have a choice.
Well, I don't.
I'm going back to my previous point.
Right. I mean, I just think that I just think that the 30-second respawn timer is just, it's more like a, and it is okay. This is another point. I was going to say it's more like a punishment than anything else, because, and this has actually been said. This has actually been said on the forums as well, that it is. Part of the reason for the 30-second respawn timer is that it is a punishment. That was specifically said by one of the team members who was on the server at that time. That was another reason they did it. It was a punishment. You know, how dare you die in a video game in the middle of a scenario, right? So it was designed that way to again to put an additional punishment, as if it wasn't bad enough, you know, that you got killed in a scenario and gave your opposition renown points or you're taken out of the fight for a period. None of that's enough. You have to sit and watch 30 seconds tick off the clock. Um, so this is just one of my pet peeves with the game. That if you want to talk about quality of life for the player base, I think that one could be changed, and it would be an improvement. It might actually encourage more people to play scenarios, because I love scenarios. I know you don't, Tosh. We've had that discussion before, but I do. I think they're one
Are
of
you
the
reading
most
what
attractive.
Kalang is saying in the chat?
I am not.
I'm gonna read it out loud because it pertains to what you're talking about. And Kalang, in answer to what you just said, and on the other side, if you're facing a winning team and you manage to come together to kill their healers, they're going to be straight back in 10 seconds later.
Well, that's not necessarily true, because if they, you know, that happens now. If you can get a res, you're back in the fight within 10 seconds anyway. But if you have to respawn, you don't respawn in the exact place you died. You respawn back at wherever the spawn point is. And take Nordenwatch, for example. Okay, so if the fighting is at the middle flag in Nordenwatch, and that's where you go down, and you have to respawn, you still have to cover the distance from the respawn point all the way back to the middle flag. Okay? And there's no changing that. There's absolutely no changing that, and, that's just the way it is with the maps. And it's the same thing with, Calidor Woods. You're in Calidor Woods, you respawn back. It takes time to get back to where the fight may be, if the fight's at the only flag in Calidor Woods. So, that I don't think that's an effective point to make, that it may get, the people back into the game or back into the fight quicker, because that option is already there. If you have someone who can res, okay, you're back in the fight in less than 10 seconds. If you don't, it still takes time to get back into the fight. It just takes a little less time. But I can guarantee you that in Lost Temple of Aisha, Calidor Woods, Nordenwatch, Kane's Embrace, any scenario you want to name, it takes longer than 10 seconds to get from the start point to wherever the main fight may be, if it's around a single point capture mechanic or even a double point capture mechanic. It takes longer than 10 seconds to make that journey in any scenario you want to play. So you're being taken out of the fight not just for the 30 seconds for the respawn timer. Sometimes it can be up to more than a minute that you're being taken out of the fight.
Tosh, any comments on that, or anyone in chat have any comments on that?
Part of me says it's a non-issue, because if players would just group up and play together, then they die together, then they respawn together. So to me, it's more of an issue of, if players don't group up and play together, and they all die at separate times, and then they all do their own thing, your respawn is, at that point, doesn't matter, because no one's playing as a team anyway. So who cares how long it takes you to respawn and run back if you got chickens running around with their heads cut off? So that's my first comment on that. But I do understand from a fundamental standpoint what Karasana is saying, that it does feel like, especially if you're in tier 1 and you're running a 25% mount, how long it takes you to run from the war camp to the middle BO with Nordenwatch, on top of the respawn timer. I agree with that standpoint. It can feel like wasted time, that, okay, I'm already running slow because I got this lousy mule, so it's going to take me a minute, 1, to respawn, and then 2, to get to the flag. So by the time I get there, that minute's going to go by, and the opposition's going to have an extra 100 points on the clock, because they're sitting at the flag, gathering points, and we can't do anything about it because it takes so long to get there. So I understand from a fundamental argument what he's saying, but I go back to, well, if players would just play together, and group up, they'll die together and they'll respawn together. Instead of doing this, I go here, you go there, I run away, you stay back and die, so that way I'll live mentality. So that's a bigger issue in my opinion. But again, I understand fundamentally what Karasan is saying, and I agree with that from a fundamental standpoint.
Let me add Kalang's response into here, because this is which is why it is good at the moment, as when you're facing tougher teams, you can take them out of the fight for extended periods to halt the snowballing. And then he follows it up. The quicker a coordinated team reforms, the quicker the slaughter continues. And I see your point, RE reses, but that is also valid for both sides. Let's see, he also states T1, I feel it would be more QOL related, but the later down the tiers you go, I feel the change becomes less QOL when you think about how people will utilize the faster respawn.
Yeah, well, how would people utilize the faster respawn? What is being alluded to there?
People would figure out a way to manipulate it in such a way that it could keep the advantage by using the quicker res time.
Well, there isn't a single aspect of this game that people haven't figured out a way to exploit or better utilize for their own purposes.
Well, I can tell you one thing: what the quicker respawn's going to do, and that is they're going to respawn faster and do dot surrender. So it allows them to do that 25 seconds faster than they normally would. I'm being facetious.
Well, the surrender option is a whole nother topic.
I mean, people don't want to finish SEs to begin with, so in the end, it doesn't really matter. I don't know if it does.
True.
I mean, there's a lot of SCs. Maybe not a lot, but there's a fair amount of SCs that never get finished anyway, because as soon as your team gets wiped one time, someone enters going to say dot surrender. And if you don't vote surrender, they're not going to participate. They're going to go off in some corner of the SC and sit behind a tree and not participate because they're upset that you didn't surrender and they didn't want to get quote unquote farmed. So
well, that happens.
But
much more.
That
happens much more in a city. That happens much more in a city than I see it happening in standard SCs.
I run into it a lot in SCs. If you watch some of my VODs from the last few days, I'd say 90% of the SCs I've been in, as soon as they can surrender, they surrender.
Even if they pop, and I know this is off topic, but the surrender I think is a bigger issue really, because as soon as somebody wipes on the first wipe, there's going to be one person that says dot surrender. There is no coming back in their mind. They die, they want to surrender, and if you don't vote with them, look at your map. You're going to usually find that individual at some far east corner, standing out of the fight, so he doesn't get killed, waiting for the SE to end and not participate, because now he's upset or she's upset that you didn't vote with him or her.
But you could also link that behavior to the kill board.
Well,
which
correct, but I took it off topic. But I think all these things kind of go all hand in hand in some ways, and I agree with you. The kill board is probably the reason why that mindset's happening. But I don't. To me, if they shorten the respawn timer to 5 seconds or 10 seconds or 15 seconds, all it's going to do is allow that person to respawn that much faster just to hit dot surrender. They're not gonna participate anyway. They're just gonna want to quit and surrender out and go do something else.
Well, I get what Kalang's saying. I know you know this, but you can report them for doing this, and GMs actively hand out SC suspensions for people like that, which escalate over time. Okay, just to point this out, and I actually made a highlight reel of this because I caught Gruffrip and his entire guild, because I actually moused over all their names to see who all was in the SC. I queued for a discordant SC. got in Howling Gorge, and lo and behold, it is the entire Gruff Rip Freebooter Guild pre-made, farming a discordant. And half the people that were in chat that were rooting for Destro immediately went on the defensive because I said something about these people should be punished because this is not supposed to happen.
That's been I see your point, but I do have to, you know, for equality, I do have to say that has been a staple of the server since scenarios were introduced on the server. That every time they've tried to make like a pug SC,
It backfires.
like I said a little while ago, people find a way to exploit it.
Yeah, I
The
get,
fact
I
that
get
you
it.
can,
It was,
you know, the fact that you can queue as a party of two to get into the discordant SC means that you can queue as 3 parties of 2. And given the population base as it stands right now, a lot of times you're all going to get in there together, right? So
You can't do duos anymore.
well, I didn't. I'm usually queuing solo, so I didn't know that. I didn't know they'd taken that out of the.
Yeah, the duo queue has been removed, but you can still queue theoretically, 6 individuals and do
Yeah.
it. So I mean, the argument's still there fundamentally, but yeah, you can no longer do queues.
yeah, it's like you said, Karis. There's always going to be people that figure a way around things, and it's annoying.
And
Go
I'm
ahead.
sorry, Toth. Go ahead. I cut you off.
It's annoying because it just drives home the point, and people start to get the mindset they feel like, okay, well, nothing's ever going to be done to stop these people. And I've had a lot of people that have come in and have flat out said, I'm done. The game is just not fun. What's the point of trying to, if I want a solo or if I queue up solo because I don't have a guild or I don't have a group to run with and I'm getting chucked in against pre-mates that are openly in defiance, have found a way to manipulate the system so that they can farm pugs. And that's what he's doing. That's what Gruff Rip's doing. I don't care what anybody says. That's what drives him. If you watch his playstyle out in the lakes, when it comes to straight up fights, more often than not, he won't do it. But if he knows he can run you over with 1 or 2 war bands, he will. And I've had people that are in his guild or that were in his guild that know him adamantly, and they've said that's his exact thought process.
I think we're kind of taking Karasana's topic off course a little bit.
But
I think we went from a respawn in 30 seconds to Gruff Rip.
yeah, sorry, I was
I admit,
alluding to that.
I'll make one more admission on that. I mean, one of my primary motivators for just to be honest about it, one of my primary motivators for opposing the 30-second respawn is, again, as a streamer, because I do so many SCs. That's my most nights. That's my primary content. Running SC after SC after SC, and on those incredibly rare occasions where I do get killed in an SC, having to sit through 30 seconds when you have an audience that you think is watching, and you're trying to promote the game, you're trying to promote the server, and I had somebody in my stream last night who had never seen the game before and was watching, and thinking about signing up. What are we stream for if not that? For those of us who want the server to survive, or actually want the server to survive, what are we stream for if that's not one of the primary motivations, right? To get new people into the game. And so, on those occasions when I have to sit through 30 fracking seconds of nothing, and then another 30 to 45 seconds on top of that, just to get back to the fight, it's boring content. It is boring content, and boring content leads to people concluding that this must be a boring game, so I'm not going to do it. There's also the point that on many occasions, there is one person on the team, that over the years has made the point again and again and again that this is a test server. Okay, if it's a test server, then why not test something?
Like
Why
making
not
PvE
test
gear
a 5
purchasable.
second? Yeah, okay. Why not test a 5-second respawn in scenarios and see how the community responds if it's a
Sorry.
test server?
It's a fair point. I mean, I get what you're saying. I also get what Kalang is saying. I mean, so far everyone has made valid points on for and against arguments, and again, all of this is gonna, I'll have it posted to my YouTube, and in turn, it'll be made available to the devs. They do watch the VODs. They do watch what everything you guys say. So that's why I plead with people, please come in, discuss your thought processes, put forward ideas and suggestions. The whole point is to come out of this with a flow of information that gets to the devs that they can pick through and be like, hey, that might not be a bad idea.
Okay, I've said my. I have said my my bit, stated my bit on that particular topic. So now it's up to you, Toph.
Well, hey, hold on a second. Let's see. I'm reading what Zell and Flim and others have said. See, Zell saying 5 seconds too short. SCs are just kill oriented now rather than objectives. A 5-second respawn, it will just become a meat grinder and a surrender graveyard. Again, I get it. I see what you're saying, Zell. Again, I also understand what Karis is saying. When you die and you have to sit there for that 30 seconds, you're like, okay, I want to get back in the fight.
On one thing Zell said, though.
Hold on a second.
Okay, all right.
Because Kalang is weighing into the conversation too, and I'm trying to make sure what he is saying and what everybody else is saying is getting heard. See, clunky bad and copy or choppy, I don't think we can do much about, as that sounds like core fundamentals of the game system and how unoptimized it is. RE, one shot everything. There's probably a few ideas around why that's happening, which would each have their own answer to how they can minimize it. Flim says, I know, mate. And then Jib, of all the war bands you made at free WBs you made at Freebooters, a role-playing guild that don't run meta. I'm stating what I saw, and the fact that what Discordant is supposed to be. And Gruff Rip's not the only one I've seen do it, and nor is it limited to Destro. If you don't like what I'm saying because I'm calling someone out on something that they've done, that's fine. But don't come in with the intention to try and go on the attack because you want to try and silence the issue, because it's not going to happen. That's also a fair point. Most of the time when I see Bitterstone, they're in small groups.
Bitterstone, since you brought them up, those guys, to me, are still the sort of like the epitome of what a guild should be. I mean, when they run together, they run together. There's a lot of practice and coordination that goes into what they do. I've always had I'm just making an aside here, right? But just as a player on the server, I've always had a lot of respect for Bitterstone and the way that they tend to run things. Um, I still have all that video from the day that the Dwarf and Orc cities opened up. I still have all that video I took that day, and it wasn't streamed. I didn't stream it. I just took all this video, and I keep thinking I should do something with it. I should make a video for Bitterstone because, they were all lined up in front of the gates. They were all lined up in perfect formation, waiting for the gates to open and stuff. And you used to see that kind of stuff more on the server than you do now. But I guess that's my point. I mean, I've always had respect for what those guys do. So I hope they never leave. I'll put it that way.
Flem, you'd have to talk to Karis on that one. I know there's a video I did of the Bitterstone 6-year anniversary celebration that's on my YouTube channel that shows their guild in full battle formation. I mean, full on them, I think Ben and Tylax, Gimli, their entire alliance, but in full battle formation.
Well, if Fleeman TV is talking about, I'm here, Fleeman, I'm here, and if he's talking specifically about all the video I took of the day that the cities opened up, the 2 new cities opened up, I mean, yeah, I still have all that, and I could, it's not on YouTube. I never uploaded it to YouTube because it's in segments. When I film something, when I record something in game, to try to get an event like that, it's not like streaming. I may record like 10 minutes, and then I stop and then start a new recording. So I've got it all, but it's all chopped up in there's like 12 different video files, and then I can edit it all together. And but if people are interested, if there's someone who's interested in me actually editing that video and putting it up, I'll do it. Please do. So if you have the time, you can be. Alright, I'll do that. I'll put it on my list of things to do this week. To go ahead and edit all that video, so that and put it up on YouTube for those who want to watch it. Because I agree with Toff, and and I would think that Tosh as a dwarf player, there's got to be some respect, some racial respect in there for what these. But it's something to see, man. It really is. When you see these guys all lined up in battle formation and everything, in context of a game, right? In context of playing a game, it's impressive stuff. So I'll work with the video and get it up as soon as I can.
I'll say this because it would be a good recruitment tool. And this is one thing that I will say about Gruffrip and the Freebooters that I can respect about them is they've been around for a long time, and for the way they do play, I might not like it, but in every sense of the word, it is true to the orc fighting style. I'll give them that. As much as the Bitterstone sticks to the role playing and the way they do things is true to the Dowie, I'll give that courtesy to Gruffrip and his guys, because he does play the orc mindset, the green tide.
I do have another issue I'd like to bring up, because I would like to hear Tosh comment. I would like to hear his point of view.
Why is that?
And I say that with all due respect. So I would like to hear what you had to say about this, and I'm going to have to give a specific example. But as anyone who has watched my videos over the years or followed my stream over time knows, my philosophy in playing this game is centered on the 1v1 in the small scale. That is where I have the most fun. And in particular, I consider the 1v1 fight to be the ultimate in, if you want to say determining, the bragging rights or whatever. So, as an example of that, I was in a scenario the other day, a number of scenarios the other day, and I was queuing solo. There was a destruction pre-made that kept showing up in them, and it was built around a choppa. I could tell that they were running the pre-made built around supporting this choppa and getting him out. And I'm not going to mention his name, I could, but in the course of running those SCs, I went down 3 times to this one choppa. Okay. That doesn't bother me, and the reason it doesn't bother me, because I have video, and this video has actually been on my YouTube page for a couple of years, where I found this exact same choppa out in Barak Var alone. We got into a 1v1, and I carved him up like, like a Thanksgiving turkey, and got the 1v1 kill. And that, to me, that's what matters. And here's one name I will mention, Yamcha. Yamcha was a good Squig Herder player, but he hung on the edges and got most of his kills by picking people off who were in the fight and taking damage from someone else. And he actually taught me that tactic when I was leveling my Shadow Warrior, because Yamcha hangs out in my stream a lot. Okay, I have another video that I published, it's on my YouTube page, where I caught Yamcha out 1v1 in Prague once and cleaned his clock. So that's what my philosophy is built on. That group fights, warband fights are great, but if you want to determine the true bragging rights, I suppose, and the true essence of the game, and how well or successful you can be at it, it's the mono fights that you get into every now and then. And Tosh, I'm saying all this because I know your play style is a lot like mine. Mine is a lot like yours. 90% of the time you're out alone. So I would like to hear your thoughts on what I have just said.
I don't think, or I don't, when I play, I don't go into it thinking that I'm any better or any worse than anyone else, and just because if I might kill you, I don't regard it as, well, it's because I'm better than you, or because there's so many factors that go into why somebody will win a 1v1 fight versus lose a 1v1 fight, and it's not always skill. A lot of it can just be RNG, procs, things like that, and you just get lucky. You get hung up on a rock, you get hung up on a fence, whatever the case may be. So I think the solo fight is the most adrenaline inducing playstyle for me, just because it is kind of like, I'm not going to get bailed out, and you're not going to get bailed out by somebody else. So either you're going to kill me, or I'm going to kill you, or you're going to puss out and run away if you're a witch elf. But in that respect, yes. But I play solo because I find warband play boring, pure and simple. Like a lot of times in my stream, people will say, there's guild leaders, like for example, Evil and I disagree a lot in regards to, play, and he feels that, my play style is wrong and it should all be done by warbands. And there's a lot of people who feel that way, and that's fine. Do your warband stuff. Enjoy it. I used to do warband stuff for many years on this server, and I found it boring, so I quit it. I didn't go into this game thinking I'm gonna be a solo player. I started off as being a warband player. and I just found it boring. So I transitioned to a solo player. So I enjoy solo from the aspect of, okay, if I find you, or if you find me, one of us is going to die. Now, however that falls down, let it fall down. But I do find it to be most an adrenaline pumping aspect of playing instead of, well, I've got 23 or 30 people or 60 people behind me to help support me atmosphere, which warband play can also be a lot of fun if it's really coordinated and things like that. I'm not taking away from warband play, but from an adrenaline point of view is why I play solo. And that's also why I enjoy solo most on my Slayer, because it's regarded as not an easy class to solo on, similarly to what people view Choppa as hard to solo on as well, because the mechanic doesn't work well for it. It doesn't have a lot of the instant CC stuff that a lot of other classes have for it. So once you're in a fight, generally speaking. That's why my Slayer is the most fun, because again, it's either I'm going to die or you're going to die. There is no getting out of it at that point. Unless, again, you're a witch elf or a witch hunter and you just want to start at a run because you're a wuss. That's why I solo. Pure and simple.
Aisha's blessings.
Because to me, standing around because right now the meta in the game, and this is actually something that I talk a lot about on my streams.
I hear you.
It's something I hear you. This is something I talk a lot about on my streams. Is, to me, the meta of the game when it comes to warband play right now is okay, we're gonna stand at one spot, you're gonna stand at one spot, and we're gonna fight here endlessly for hours. And we're not gonna move, and you're not gonna move. And to me, I call it kill trading on my stream. Like yesterday, I streamed, and I said, look, I'm gonna run around Prague, and I'm gonna show you how empty Prague is. But Prague has 300 people in the zone, so I would run around the whole perimeter of the whole map. Go to Graveyard, go to Manor, go all these places, empty, dead empty. And I'm like, okay, watch. Now I'm going to hit MS. Well, there goes all 300 people standing at MS. And they don't move. Okay, well, that's not fun to me. So...
I understand. I concur with that part of it, the warband play. I felt the same way for a long time, that warband play is a lot more static than what people generally would acknowledge, right? And I find that boring as well. I also agree with you on the adrenaline factor. There's nothing more exciting in context of playing this game. To me, there's nothing more exciting than the random 1v1 encounter. Now, I want to make a difference here, because a couple people in the stream have talked about dueling. Okay, dueling is not the same as the random 1v1 encounter. And the difference
I agree.
The difference is, when you decide to go out solo and just run around solo, you choose the spec you're going to be in, and you go out, and then, hang on, give me 1 second, I got to cough real quick.
Not a problem.
Okay. You choose the spec you're going to be in, and you go out, and then you find somebody 1v1. They are in whatever spec they were in, and so there's that unknown factor of it. You're not specifically set up to fight, quote, a marauder, or you're not specifically set up to fight an S&B chosen, or our region witch elf. You're in your spec, and you don't know what the other guy's in until the fight actually starts. Okay, that is not the same as dueling. If you say, let's go to the Garden of Quark and run some duels, then you show up in dueling spec. There's a very particular spec that you can go into on most classes to go out and duel. It tends to be more defensive in nature, so that you can, because in a place like the Garden of Quark, you can take as long as you want to fight that battle. Out in open RVR, you can't. In open RVR, you have to try to settle that affair as quickly as you can before somebody else shows up to ruin it, for, one way or the other, right? I had a 1v1 going with the Chosen in Chaos Waste the other night, and almost had this guy down, and some fracking witch hunter showed up and came running in and took the kill. I was pissed. Sorry, Toph. I'm sorry. I was severely disappointed, at that, because sometimes, but that's the difference in soloing the random encounter and a duel, right? Because in solo encounter you have to account for all of those other factors. So anyway,
I got you.
I
get what you guys are saying, and I understand what chat's saying too. I mean,
What is chat saying? I'm sorry. I'm not on the stream. I apologize.
with the dueling and aspects and stuff. Let's see.
I mean,
NS Canada is saying, bring back the attain.
I mean, I agree with Kirasana. Dueling is not the same as solo fighting. Purely because from the aspect of, let's say if I'm going to duel Kirasana on a Swordmaster and I'm going to bring my Slayer. Okay, well we all know Kirasana's going to lose that fight. But anyway, I'm going to immediately change my build to duel against his Swordmaster. Because I'm going to say, well, okay, the Swordmaster is going to have this, this, and this, so I'm going to change my build to counter this, this, and this against him. Well, that would not work against a Sork or a Magus or whatever else. So from that aspect of dueling is not the same, because there's not one build that you run around on to duel is not the same build you run around on to solo, because everyone's going to change. Everyone's going to change their build. They're going to say, oh, I'm going to duel the Magus now, because let me go see the respec trainer real quick. Let me go ahead and get, Def Defender 3 or FS5 or whatever they want to do to counter whatever the Magus. Okay, well, now I'm going to go
set up your tactic spread,
Yeah. Now, okay. Now I'm gonna go duel a Shadow Warrior. Okay, let me go change this real quick. Let me swap my tactics around. You can't do that in a 1v1 fight. You like what Kirasana says, you are what you are. So if you're in a spec that does really good against Marauders, you're probably gonna really suck against somebody who's not a Marauder. You're just not gonna do well. Or if you spec, to do really well against melee, then range is going to eat you up because you have no defenses against range. So I agree. Dueling spec is not the same as solo for every encounter spec.
And let's see. Canada is saying attain didn't allow for spec. Hold on. Didn't allow for spec switching on the fly, so I went on my Slayer against Magus, or Chosen with the same build. I dueled on my IB against every desk class, lost horribly to Dokes, but we learned a lot in terms of building spec that worked in every situation. That would actually probably be something useful if it's not typed up on the forums, would actually probably be a good thing to have up there, or maybe even get it put up on the wiki as a reference guide for people.
You can have general builds that do well against against most classes, but what you're not taking into consideration is the skill factor of the player that you're fighting against.
True.
So even if you have a build that is, let's say, will cover 80% of the classes in the game, it does not cover 80% of the skill factor of the players you're fighting against.
Yeah, it requires the person to understand how to make the build work.
Correct. I mean, you could have the best build in the game, but if you don't know how to utilize it and how to use it against your opponent, it does you no good.
Yeah. Which is why I've told people when they've come in and commented, like, you're lousy on your Slayer. Like, I know this. I have never once said that I'm the best player on my Slayer. In point of fact, I have pointed it out quite adamantly that melee classes are the bane of my existence. They always have been.
So, did I answer your question, Kirasana, though, since you were directed towards me?
Well, yeah. I mean, I wanted to hear your thoughts, and I appreciate that.
Well, again, all good topics of discussion. I do want to put. At this point, I'm gonna open the floor up to you guys in the chat. Uh, if any of you have a valid topic that you'd like to bring to the table or put out there, to ask the other two individuals in the chat with me, hear their thoughts on it. Go into a little bit more of a discussion of it. Now's your opportunity. Again, I love hearing the questions and viewpoints. Just be open-minded to the fact that, not everyone's going to agree with your viewpoint. That's all I ask.
I do have one thing I want to bring up. It's not really like a topic, but there's one thing I want to bring up. Really quick.
Fire away.
I was watching Karasana's VOD of his Realm Watch yesterday. I was watching it last night because, like I said, I like to watch a lot of VODs. So instead of watching TV, I watch Warhammer VOD streams. Call me a loser. So I felt honestly bad, and I say this with all heart, Karasana. I felt bad for you yesterday during Realm Watch because you were doing Realm Watch with the tools that you had available, and one, you started off crashing nonstop, which sucks. Because one thing I thought was kind of funny at first is you said, I do this to help promote the server, and all of a sudden, immediately, right when you said server crashed for you.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my god, what great timing, Yeah. And I was like, okay. And so you crashed like 2, 3, 4 times. I'm like, okay, this sucks. Then the second thing I felt bad for you on is that you're streaming, you're doing your show the best of your ability, and all you get is exclamation mark giveaway. Of all the things you're talking about, it's just giveaway. And I'm like, if I was Karasana, I would throw my mic down, turn off the stream, and walk away.
All right.
Well, let me address that.
Go ahead.
Let me see. Am I on?
Yeah.
I was eating something, so I didn't. At some point, I might have turned my mic off. But anyway, let me address that. If you watch the VOD, I did address that issue a couple of times about people just putting in exclamation point giveaway, and some people started changing that based on what I was saying. They started changing it. A couple of people put in exclamation point no giveaway, but I have to admit, I felt when I finished Realm Watch yesterday, I had two emotions, and I hope Kaling is still listening, or just because, I'm not going to be mean here. I don't mean it that way, because it is true. Let me say this first, the qualifier, right? It is true that I appreciate the fact that I get to do Realm Watch. I believe in it. I believe in it. I believe it's a good vehicle to promote the server and all that. I really do. But anybody out there who thinks it's easy needs to rethink, because it is sometimes very frustrating. And specifically on Toth's point about, I would bring issues up in the chat and all I would get was exclamation point giveaway. I came close to doing, yesterday, I will admit, I came close to doing exactly what you said. I had a moment where I was just going to, I was going to say, okay, the hell with you guys. And I was going to turn the stream off, but I decided, no, I'm a professional. I was asked to do this. I said I would do it. So I kept going. And by the end of the stream, I had a blast. I had a lot of fun. I really did. I thought yesterday, overall, was one of the best Realm Watches I had done in a while. And I had a lot of fun doing it. And it was simply because when I hit that point early in the stream, and pushed through that little barrier, right, I started having fun, because I no longer cared what anybody said. once I pushed through that little barrier, I no longer cared what anybody said in the chat. And I started making jokes. I started going at, I started just being myself and having fun. And by the time the rum watch was finished, I was in a great mood and everything was copacetic. So, you're right though, Tosh. That was the exclamation point giveaway thing. That was frustrating. It really was.
I want to make it clear.
You didn't help, Tosh. I swear.
I'm not picking on you. It's something I honestly was watching it and I was like, oh my god.
And Toth, you didn't help, because when Tosh was talking about the fact that, I think the reason I was crashing early in the stream was because I went straight into a fort. And the algorithm that runs the Realm Watch character, I've had it happen before that when I go into a fort, it will kick me out of the fort. For some reason, it doesn't, unlike in a scenario where I can go in a scenario and the algorithm doesn't even recognize that I'm there. In a fort, it does. For some reason, in a fort, it does recognize that I'm there, and sometimes will kick me out because I'm not, quote, doing anything. It's not reading that I'm actually doing anything as part of the fight, right? And it will kick me out. But for yesterday, I kept crashing, and then Todd comes in, and his whole comment was, and I was like, okay, thanks, buddy. That was the support I needed, for you to come in and say, and then disappear. And I remember commenting, I said, okay, now the bar has been set. You guys have to make some comment that is better than, So it actually, you helped motivate me too in the long run. But
well, I do have a question from the chat that I want to pose to you guys. Question, a topic close to Tasha's heart. Getting the Onslaught appearance out to a wider audience, either overriding one of the sets with reused green gear styles or without buying it via war tokens.
I can tell you right off the bat, that's probably comes from Zell.
Yeah.
Yes, I would be 100% in favor of buying Onslaught gear with war tokens. Give players a choice.
I suppose. I've never really messed with the Onslaught gear. I've seen people in it, I'm like, I don't know. And incidentally, Order is, at the moment, well, as usual, a cluster of different ideologies. Apparently, the ones in Calador just want to stay in Calador and beat their head against the wall. But, yeah. Anyone else with any questions or anything that they would like to ask Karis and Tosh while you have a chance, guys? I mean, I'd love to hear more stuff out of you guys.
I have another one then, if we have time for it.
Yeah, we got a little bit of time.
Okay, so I'll try to make it fast, and I won't go on my long rants. There is another topic on the forums that I'm actually involved with, or somewhat involved with. Not involved with, but I've commented on. And that is rewards. Some players view that rewards are not enough, that there needs to be more rewards to incentivize play.
Okay.
And that the reason why OpenRVR is quote-unquote stale is because the campaign has zero meaning, because cities have been changed to a scheduled system. So some players view that there's no reason to attack a keep or defend a keep because it doesn't offer any rewards in doing so. That your rewards come from, well, I can just stand outside and do something else while everybody else does this, I get better rewards. My comment on that is, okay, if you look at it from a purely stat sheet perspective, if you open up your Excel spreadsheet and you say, okay, if I play for an hour and if I only do this, I will get X amount of work rest or X amount of renown. Fine. But what about your fun factor? What about your actual game enjoyment? What about doing something that you actually enjoy doing, since it is a game? So I'm like, why isn't playing the game enough reward? Why do players feel like they need more and more rewards, more and more carrots to play a game for fun? Why is not playing the game enough reward in itself? So there we go. That's my question.
My response on that, honestly, and this is just my own point of view, I think a lot of it's got to do from not just the gaming community as a whole, but even in real life. People have forgotten what it's like just simply to do something for the enjoyment of doing it. It's shifted to the mindset, well, what am I going to get out of it? And if there's nothing I'm personally going to gain out of it, then they don't see a need or want to do it at all.
Granted, you know, if I'm on my solo slayer, yes, I will get more renown. Not that he technically needs it, but I'll get more renown if I don't help defend or if I don't help attack a keep. More than likely, because I'll be able to pick out stragglers trying to get to a location. So I'll have more solo fights, which means I allow me to get more crests and more renown. But I don't play for the reward aspect of getting renes or crests or renown. I play for the aspect of fun, moving the campaign along and enjoying myself and trying to help, you know, my friends, my quote unquote friends, my realm mates. Even though I might not be grouped with you, I still want to help you achieve our common goal, which is to defeat our enemy. Not to sit there and try to worry about, okay, I have played 3 hours, I have gotten 0.991 crests per hour, I need to increase my crest earnings from 0.991 to 0.123 crests per hour. To do this, I need to go over here and to stand here and to do this. I do not play like that. I don't understand the mindset of only playing. My only motivation to log into Warhammer is so I can get a bag in the mail. That's my motivation.
I've often made the point in discussion on my stream and even on the forums that if you just log on, when it comes to the issue of gaining crests, gaining gear, gaining whatever, man, if you just log on and play the game and enjoy the game, all of that will come in time. And as an example, I would cite, since you're here, I mean, I remember some time ago, you and I, Tosh, having a conversation about cities. And, you know, you rarely did cities.
I haven't done a city since 2020.
Yeah, and your point was valid. Your point was absolutely true that in order to be able to get the sovereign gear, the crest that you needed, even back before the crest change, right? When you had to get sovereign crest dropped in open RVR, so there was no need to do cities. Okay, I did cities just because it was another scenario. Basically, it was another, just much larger scenario. But I understood your point, and the fact that you didn't, I understood why you didn't do them, and I didn't have any issue with it. I understood it because you could get the crest that you needed anyway, and that just, I think, just sort of bolsters my point that if you just, like you're saying, if you just play the fracking game, man, just play the game, have fun with the game, and everything else will come along in time, right?
Yeah. I remember back in 2020. I've done a total of 3 cities my entire time on this server. A total of 3 cities on all my characters. I've done 3 total, and I remember back in 2020, there was a player who said, well, fine, if you don't do cities, it's going to take you a year to get Sovereign. Which he was right. It took my Slayer 10 months to solo earn Sovereign from kills. But guess what? A year later, I'm still playing. That player had quit. I'm still playing since 2016. I'm still here playing. How many players who grinded their arses off to get gear as fast as they possibly can say they're still here playing the game?
Yeah, they got it and then left.
They got their carrot. Then they said, well, now there's no reason to play, so no, I'm done.
And I disagree. You get all the stuff so that you can go out and use it, right? You get all the stuff so you can go out and use it.
Yeah, but there's people that do, like Tasha's saying, they'll get the gear, and then that's it. They're done. They're like, oh, this is a dead game.
So I get frustrated when I see people say, this is another point. People say, well, getting gear is too hard. Getting Chris is too hard. Okay. Again, and I'm not trying to promote my stream here, but when I stream, I point out, I'm like, look, I've died 5 times. This warband has not moved in 5 respawn times. They're still standing at the war camp. I've died 5 times, and I've killed maybe 2 people in this time, and I've gotten, let's say, 12 crests. There's a reason why it's taking you forever to get crests, because you don't do anything.
Yeah, that's another one of my pet peeves, and I've had the same argument with people over the years here, that I remember one very profound occasion where there was an entire warband setting at Martyr Square in Prague, setting up, on the platform, while just to the side, in the alleyway, me and 2 other guys were fighting Destro, and for the entire time we were fighting, they just sat there at the objective and did nothing. And we wound up winning the fight. And we killed like 7 or 8 Destro because they kept coming in one at a time, 1 or 2 at a time, whatever. And I put it in region chat. I said, okay, while all you guys were sitting there on the objective doing nothing, I got 22,000 renown in this fight. So who's coming out ahead here, right?
I mean, if you join a pug warband, and I'm trying to bash pug warbands, or I'm not trying to bash warbands in general, but if you join a warband, you're 24 people, and all you want to do is chase around 6-mans or solo players and kill them, yeah, you're not going to earn any crests, because you're sharing those 1 kills or 6 kills between 24 other people. So yeah, you're gonna be like, well, I've been in this warband for an hour and I've only earned 1 crest. This sucks. Because your warband that you're in, and I'm not trying to be mean to warbands. I'm not trying to, and I'm not trying to promote solo play. But if you just go out and be active, the crests will roll in. I'm not saying you can get 1,000 a day, and I'm not saying just because I might get 300 a day on a good day. Solo play is a little bit different. You can be a little bit more selfish because you get 5, 6, 7 crests a kill, and you might get 20,000 renown by killing 1 person if you're lucky. So it's a little bit of a different algorithm there. But I don't sit there and sit in a war camp for 5 or 10 minutes while somebody else is taking a potty break and just stand there and wait for that 1 person to get back. I respawn and I'm out. I don't stand around and wait. I don't care about my KD.
Yeah, the issue is get out, just get out and do something.
I don't care about my KD. I don't care if you kill me 30 times. So for people who say, well, I joined a warband, I only got 10 crests in 3 hours. Well, how active were you? What did your warband do? What did you do? Quit caring about your damn killboard KD ratios and just play the game and enjoy it. All that stuff will come earn. You'll get the bags. You'll earn all of that stuff over time, but quit thinking about it as like an Excel spreadsheet and trying to calculate how you can maximize whatever carrot you want with doing the least amount of effort. Otherwise, you're just gonna, to me, you're gonna make a horrible gaming experience for yourself. And again, that's why I think, again, I've been here since 2016. I'm still here, and I'm still playing, and I still play my Slayer on occasion, although I've been playing alts, who's now well past round rank 90. I don't care about carrots and gear. I play for the fun of playing. My KD, I don't care about that. If you want to kill me 1,000 times, kill me 1,000 times. Don't care. I'm here for the fun of playing the game.
Well, my one different. I mean, I care when I to this extent. When I go into a fight at any level, whether it's 1v1, 6v6 scenario, whatever, when I go into a fight, I want to win the fight. And so when you lose a fight, it's when you lose a fight, it's disappointing. But it's not disappointing because it will show up on the kill board, and someone might look at the kill board and think, "Oh, this guy sucks." Okay, I don't give a shit about that. I'm sorry, Toth. I'm getting wound up here, but I don't care about that either. I don't, in the exact same sense you're talking about. If somebody looks at the kill board and sees it, whatever my numbers are, and they think I'm a bad player because of it, okay, they can get a life, man. Okay, they need to get out and find a girlfriend or something. They need to find, something to round out their life. And because that's not why I play. I play, like you're saying, for the enjoyment of the game. For that moment when I get into a fight and win the fight. That's what's important.
And I agree that in a sense I enjoy winning the fight, but sometimes some of my best memories are the fights that I've also lost. I can have fun.
Yeah, it's a good fight. Yeah,
I can have fun losing. That winning isn't the only thing that makes it worthwhile to me. I don't go into it thinking, you know what, this sucks because I lost. Now this game sucks because I died. It wasn't fun. You can have fun losing. Like a comment I make also on my stream a lot is currently the new, that's not really a new meta, but it's a meta that's growing more and more and more, and that is don't siege, because if we lose, we're going to give our opponent the bag for defending. Well, to me, you're already going into it an attitude of loss. Okay, you're already giving up in that aspect. You're not going to an attitude of winning. You're going. It's like a football team that goes, we're not here to win the game. We're just here not to lose. Well, that's a losing attitude. Okay, you go into it to win the game. But then the second thing is, even if you do fail the siege, and even if your opponent does win that bag, who cares? Who cares? Who cares if your opponent gets a blue bag and they get 5 crests, or 30 crests, or 20 crests? Who cares? Does it really matter that much?
To some people it does. But I understand what you're saying, Tosh.
Would you rather do that, or just stand around and stare at each other, or stand at one spot and quote unquote kill trade to avoid getting somebody a blue bag for a keep defense?
Oh no. Okay, you made it, Toth. I thought in that jump you might have jumped too far, but you made it.
I'm trying. It's not going real good. Orders getting hammered, and Destros, yeah. I mean, case in point, they're full war bands just sitting at the waterfall.
So I was streaming, and I don't mean to rant on this too much longer, and I apologize. I was streaming earlier this week, and Formosa was on, and they popped 2 rams, and Order failed both sieges. So somebody came into my stream and they said, haha, Destro wins, Order sucks, or whatever. I made the comment, well, at least Order's doing something.
I
Yes,
remember that
order
when I was on.
or,
It was
or,
on when you said that.
order might have lost, but they're doing something. I would rather spawn 10 rams and fail and give my opponent 10 blue bags, but do something besides sit in a zone for 8 hours staring at each other because nobody wants to fight because I might give my opponent a goddamn give my opponent a bag.
Oh,
So anyway, I'm done.
No, it just comes down to just to put a point on it, like like a closing point on this particular issue, is it does come down to just playing the game because you enjoy the game, and taking your successes where you can engineer them, where you can get them, and not worrying so much about the fact, like Tosh said, that you played for an hour and only got 4 crest. If you just play the game as an immersive experience to have fun. I look back at leveling my witch elf. I mean, I took my hits when I was leveling my witch elf, but I had an absolute blast. And the last thing I was worried about when I was leveling my witch elf was how many crest I was getting every hour. I was having a blast because I was doing witch elf stuff. I was doing the things that witch elves do and having fun with it. And that's what we need more of around here, is just people who enjoy the game for the sake of the game. And then if you do that, as my last comment on this issue, if you do that, if you just play the game and enjoy the game, all the other stuff will come in time. And
that's true.
so shall it be written, so shall it be done.
Okay, nice quote from the old movie Moses with Charlton Heston.
That's right.
Yes, I'm that old. I actually have that in the Ten Commandments. That of the Ten Commandments movie and Ben Hur on DVD. Yes, I'm an old dinosaur. But at any rate, guys, anybody else have any other questions they would like to put forward? Because I do need to kind of wrap things up here. We've been going for a little over 2 hours, and I do try to keep the podcast to 2 hours. A lot of interesting topics have been put out there. A lot of valid viewpoints from both sides of the community. I will say this because this needs to be touched on because I do deal with this a lot. If you have a problem with my viewpoint of things, that's fine. You should still be able to respect that I have my viewpoint as much as you have your viewpoint. It's not a question of, oh, I'm trying to attack you of your viewpoint so you change your tune. If you want me to change my thought process, then present the information that you're wanting to talk about. Or it would be even nicer, because I know this is largely aimed at the fact that a lot of people feel, well, I'm just going at Destro. If you watch any of my streams, you will hear me rant more about order and the constant back and forth arguing that they do. Destro, and I, to be clear, to put this out there to the entire community, because I see Order complain about it a lot. Guess what, Order? The reason you lose most of the fights is because you won't cooperate with one another. You would rather cut each other's throats than to set aside your ego and actually work together. That's what costs you fights. Destro is just better at the teamwork end of things. Yes, they have their days when they have trouble. But Order on the whole, most of the time, case in point, Land of the Dead, Order could win more if they would actually try and work together to do something. Instead of this constant, I'm going to do my thing, you do your thing. So
There's a big
My
reason
last-
for that. There's a big reason for
Yeah.
that, in my opinion. But anyway,
it's just, I get tired of it that people want to say, oh, well, you're just bashing on Destro. No, I'm not just bashing on Destro. I don't like some of the playstyles, but that's my opinion. But at the end of the day, the individual war band leader that's leading that group, that is the playstyle that works for them. that, fair point. Go ahead, Karis.
My final comment would be this, kind of in line with what you're saying too, is that the player base at large, and there should be, in my opinion, there should be more people in here right now listening to what all is being discussed, and there should be more people participating in the discussion. The player base at large now has a number of avenues open to them to have their voices heard. The forums, you can, 90%, and I'm probably being generous, but 90% of what is posted on the forums goes completely unrecognized. It's passed over one or two, every now and then you get an issue that comes up that will spark people's interest, but most of what's posted there is just, it's posted and then off into oblivion,
Yeah.
Discord, the Return of Reckoning Discord, you can go there, but the Return of Reckoning Discord is so heavily moderated that it's counterproductive to try to hold a discussion there because it's so heavily moderated. And, you never know, you never know when you might make God angry with whatever little innocent comment you may make or whatever the context was. And, so that's not a healthy place to discuss it either on the Return of Reckoning Discord. And, that's not a healthy place to try to have a discussion either. But you now have Realm Watch to come in and make your point. You now have this podcast to come in and make your point. And if you're not willing to come on a public forum, even if it's any of those four that I cited, if you're not willing to come on and make your point and articulate your point and defend your point, then you don't have a point. That's the way I see it. If you're not willing to articulate and discuss your issue and try to do something positive, then you don't have a point. So it's here, guys, and you need to get the word out and get in touch with Tosh. Or if you want to be on Realm Watch, you can come on and talk to me on Realm Watch. There's a set of rules for being on Realm Watch that are even more strict than being here, but you can come on, and as long as you can be an adult, you can come on Realm Watch and make your point.
Can I say a last final thing? Then I'll go to Toth.
Go ahead, Tosh.
My last final thing is, I wanted to come on this podcast today so I could throw my opposing views to ideas that Karasana and Toth had in regarding certain things that I disagreed with. I came here because I wanted to, instead of going, and I'm not saying anyone does this, I didn't want to go on my stream and just talk about them. I wanted to talk to them.
Yeah.
About it.
I respect that.
Yep.
I could easily just sit on my stream and say, Karasana this or Toth this or whatever. No, I wanted to talk to them and have a discussion about it. So I would recommend that other people, if you have opposing views to me or anyone else, then talk. Bring it up. There's nothing wrong with saying, I think you're wrong, or I disagree. Not that I think you're wrong, but I disagree with you, and this is why. Because I disagreed with Karasana and Toth regarding my first topic, heavily. And so that's why I wanted to come on here.
And I respect that. That's part of why I do this. I want to hear the differing views. I don't want to just hear one side of the argument. And some people seem to think that I'm only fixated on things to do for order. And I'm like, no, that's not it.
So if people want to talk about things or have issues or have things that, there's no reason to feel afraid or like you're going to get in trouble or, we're not a bunch of 3-year-olds here. So talk. Otherwise, as Karasana said, you have no issue. If you're just going to go into a forum or into your private guild Discord and say, this guy is this or this guy is that, or they're wrong or they're right or whatever, but you're just talking with your own inner community of 4 people, you have no topic, you have no side, you have no opinion, because you're not actually talking about your opinion openly. You're hiding.
I agree.
Anyway, I'm done.
Yeah, okay. I want to.
You have a great day, everyone.
Appreciate Appreciate
Tosh.
you being here, Tosh. Look forward to seeing you and on your streams and stuff. I want to say this in closing, guys, because this I can say without it causing any trouble. But I've had positive feedback from Max, Rubius, and others. They enjoy hearing what you guys discuss on the Realm Watch and the podcast. It is helpful. So come on, use the avenues that are there to discuss things. Get the ball rolling. Simply sitting there and going to your little corner and yelling at the top of your lungs, or however you want to look at it, is not getting anywhere. I am setting aside 2 hours, sometimes longer, as I did today, of my time where I open up the floor to whatever discussion you guys want to talk about. The only thing I don't allow is people to bash one another. I disagree with people's play styles all the time. That's my right. I'm one person. So please, go out there, tell your guilds, tell the warband leaders, tell anybody that would like to come on and share their viewpoints. The door's open. But all in all, I think the podcast today has been solid. A lot of good discussions, a lot of good viewpoints have been heard from both the chat, from Karis, Tosh. Now Tosh has had to step out. So I do want to thank everybody for tuning in. I am gonna get back to my regular broadcast of me just trying to earn Warcrest and fight my way to 76. And I do want to thank Karis, resident host of the Realm Watch, for being here. I want to thank Kalang for coming in. I know he's probably not still watching, but you know, the fact that him and the devs and stuff have been on the show in the past, or have come in the chat and shared their thoughts, you know, it's good to have that interaction, and I encourage it. Karis, any closing thoughts on this before I wrap it up?
No, I agree. I think today was, a good podcast. A lot of good issues raised, and again, my only request following this is just, more people need to get involved, and otherwise it was a good day. So I appreciate the opportunity.
No worries, and guys, go check out Karis and Kelly. For those of you that want to look at that footage and stuff, hit up his YouTube, be supportive, put some positive feedback in there.
I'm sorry, man. Let me say that real quick.